We're going to talk about the success cycle by Tony Robbins and a few of the things that I want to go over. I remember watching this from Tony Robbins just a few short years ago. And Tony Robbins, if you don't know him, you should look him up. Anthony Robbins has by the way, a great movie/documentary of one of his main events he does on Netflix. It is called I Am Not Your Guru. Highly recommended. And before Tony Robbins started his career of building hundreds of businesses, he actually was a marriage counselor, sex therapist. Fantastic guy. So he breaks down the success cycle and how we all come in to a new sport, a new relationship. And so most people, when they look at, let's say I start a new sport, let's say I've never played tennis in my life. So I want you to look maybe a little bit to the left up here. Let's imagine this graph and let's pretend, okay, that this is how much time is spent and this is the level of mastery or skill. So let's say this is 100% level of mastery and this is 0. This is where I begin because I have never played golf in my life. So how quickly throughout the first few weeks, think about it like this, how quickly do you achieve 100% mastery is, let's say, Tiger Woods or the best golf, players in history. How quickly can I get up to maybe 20 or 30%? Pretty quickly, right? Because it takes me maybe the first couple of weeks, I buy my first golf club, I get the new shoes, I go on a few tournaments, or I go watch a few tournaments with some of my friends. I can understand the rules, start playing, and start behaving and even dressing like a golf player fairly quickly. Now, what usually happens is at this point, normally people hit there's a plateau. It even goes a little bit lower, right? So after enough time has been spent, and again, I want you to think about the first couple of months. You join new friends, you have new shoes, they smell like new shoes, you have new golf clubs. It's like the new thing you talk about. When you're out with your friends, that's all you talk about, the new thing you're doing, the new sport, the new thing. But then after a little bit, now, if it's a new sport, now you're kind of sore, maybe you don't really enjoy it so much, and your results don't necessarily get better. They actually tend to usually get a little bit worse than when you started, because this also involves that excitement and that natural happiness at the beginning anytime we start something new. Like when you were a kid and you had the smell of the new books and the new notebooks that you didn't want to rip a little page at the end. Or when you bought your first new car, even if it's not a new car, but that smell of that brand new car, that brand new vehicle. You don't want to eat in it. You don't want certain people to come in with their, shoes, dirty shoes in it, etc. Then after that, it plateaus. And here at this point is usually when people quit. What do? Is they go start something else. So they go from golf that I will, let's say that was tennis, or that was golf. So now they go start something else, and now it's a new sport, now it's tennis, and they go up the same thing, and they plateau, and then they quit. And then they start something else. They go to a new sport, and they get excited, they have fun and plateau, and then they quit. And people spend their entire life, okay, doing that with their job, doing that with their relationships. If you do the math, I think it's more than 50% of couples that are, unfortunately, that marriages that get divorced is because after a certain time, it plateaus. And people do not like this. People like this, but people do not like this, especially when it comes to maybe this part. There is a moment in which you have to get worse to understand the level of action you need to take to get up. Okay? What does a winner do? What is usually a straggler? A straggler probably is going to, again, hit this and quit. What a winner would do is they would fight and they would kind of get up there and then maybe hit another plateau. And then they would probably be disappointed again. And then they would probably hit another plateau and be disappointed again. And eventually they just figure it out and then they just struggle. They want to quit. I hate this, this sucks. They even go backwards in skill. They get really good, that sucks again. Now this is the worst I've ever been right here. I'm here for a little bit of that. And eventually they create a breakthrough and they win. The thing is, that sucky part, people hate. So the reason why is because people look at results as their first step in their imaginary success cycle. People start here. And I want you to believe, of course, if you get results on something and it's positive, or let's say it's the opposite, right? Let's say you're on that stage where you get really good and then you hit this plateau. When you're here, what kind of results you're getting. The problem is people start here. What kind of results you're getting when you're at a plateau? You're getting low results. Now, if you have low results, what is that going to do to your attitude? What is that going to do to your belief? Are you going to believe you're going to be able to do it? No, you're not going to believe you're going to be able to do it. And if you do not believe something's going to work, how much of your potential are you tapping into? Are you tapping into a big part of your potential? Or are you tapping into a smaller part of your potential? You're not tapping into a lot of potential because you didn't get much results. You see how this makes sense? You didn't get much results. Therefore, you don't really think it's going to work, so I'm not going to tap into so much of my energy to put out there to win. And what is that going to do to my action? When I don't think there's much results, I don't really think it's going to work, and I'm not really tapping into all of my energy and potential, am I going to take a lot of action, or am I going to take just a little bit of action and kind of not really get tired? I'm going to take a little bit of action. And you tell me, what usually happens when you take a little bit of action? Do you get great results or do you get low results? And of course, you're answering yourself. You're like, well, you get low results because you didn't take much action. And this happens, and again, insert your job, insert a relationship, insert a sport, insert anything that is worth having. And so I didn't put a lot of action. I did get poor results. So what happens again after I didn't get poor results? What does that do to my belief? What am I speaking out to the world, to my friends? Am I talking about how much it works? No, I'm talking about how it's not really working. I'm talking about how I'm not really believing in it anymore. So therefore, how much potential am I going to tap into to go into that next level? Not much. And if I don't have much potential, much energy to put out there, how much action am I going to take again the second go around? I'm not going to take much action because it's not really working. If I don't take much action, am I going to have good results or bad results? I'm going to have poor results, and blah, 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 blah. And this cycle, the negative cycle, goes on and on. And by the way, that's how you see, economies crashing, is because of that. It starts all on base pass results. What you got to do is the exact opposite, is you have to break this. And you cannot start, and you cannot expect the results from something you haven't spent hours and hours training. So when I'm speaking to Philly here that's recording, he spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours behind the camera. So he can expect good results. But if somebody's never picked up a camera, never done any video editing, never done any of this, then it's very complicated for that person. It would be almost foolish for that person to expect good results. However, sometimes people do it. Why? Because they're addicted to that 20%. To that 0 to 20%, that's very exciting. If you want something long-term, you want to create long-term results, wealth, you want to create a significant career, you want to create a great marriage, you want to actually be a professional at a sport, you have to play long-term. The way you play long-term is you cannot start on results. You got to expect the results will not be there until everything else. You got to start your success cycle here at the belief part. You got to have tons of belief. You got to go into it, learning about other people. So let's say I go into this new job and I don't have any belief, I don't have any results, I'm at 0% mastery, 0% time. What's the first thing I do? I go build my belief. What do? Is I go to the best people at the job and I'm like, how awesome is this? Tell me the best parts about it. Tell me some things that I can worry about, but tell me a few things that are going great. How much money are you making and how could I do? What's some extra homework I can do? If I have a lot of belief because I surround myself with stories of people that are doing it right, what does that do to my potential? Am I going to tap into a lot of potential or am I going to tap into just a little bit? Well, I'm going to tap into a lot of energy and a lot of potential. I'm probably going to spend my extra Sunday, my extra Saturday, my extra time off trying to gather more and more energy to do this thing. And when I have lots of energy, a great belief that it's going to work. So that's the question. If I have lots of energy, a lot of belief and a great attitude that this is going to work, what does that do to my action? Am I going to take a little bit of action or am I going to take a lot of action? I'm probably going to take lots of action. And when I take lots of action with great potential and a great attitude, does that usually create low results, poor results, or great results? It usually creates great results. And so now I created great results. And if I have a good first go around, I created great results, what does that do to my belief and my attitude? Now I believe that I can see it. Now I become one of these success stories. Now I'm one of these people. And what does that do when I have a great belief again? After getting a little bit of good results, I have a great attitude. I surround myself with success stories. What does that do to my potential? I tap into even more of my potential. I borrow energy from places. I beat the tiredness. I beat the outside factors that might be negative and I take a lot of action. What does that do to my results? After I took a lot more potential and I took even more action after all the experience, what does that do to my results? My results get better. And then after I get even better results, what does that do to my attitude? This is the third time. I'm going to be very excited. This is going to be great. It's working out for me. I'm starting to get my first paychecks. I'm starting to get the second or third date. I'm starting to understand the sport. I'm starting to scale through the ranks. What does that do to my potential? I tap to even more. I go out of my way to have more energy, to have better shifts, to make a bigger sacrifice. And what does that do to my action? Do I take more action or do I take less? I mean, if you're putting a lot of your potential out there, again, you're even spending maybe time and money and mental bandwidth, mental real estate. You have a great attitude because now you have a little bit of experience. Do you take more or less action? You take more. And when you take even more action, what does that do to your results? Do they go up or down? And the thing is that they go up, and that's the circle. That's the circle. So all this to just for you to realize that the circle works both ways, and it makes sense both ways, whether it's negative or positive, but it depends on where does it start. If you start judging on results, but you have collected 0 time on the graph for experience, your results will be bad. Therefore, this will not work because the success cycle is starting at the wrong spot with the wrong expectation. You have to start at your belief. If you have none, you have to find it through other people so that you can now collect energy. Call it energy, potential, call it willingness, eagerness, excitement towards investing time, and then that's going to create a lot of action. And again, it's not guaranteed, but usually when you run a lot and you eat less, you lose weight. Usually, when you practice a sport 6 hours a day, after 3 months, you're better at the sport than you were. The guarantee is you were better at the sport than you were before you practiced. And that usually gets you more results. It's what are you doing with your success cycle? How are you approaching your new job? And also, are there people in your family or friends that are maybe influencing this because of their past experience? Sometimes I have to learn to put those aside. Hopefully that helps, and we'll see you at the next one.